Hello and welcome. Today on the 6th week's 4th lecture, let us going to discuss on the urban and other settlements as far as various mitigation activities are concerned. We will discuss it over the following concepts. We will try to discuss about the various options we have as far as urban mitigation is concerned. We will also try to understand what do you mean by urban or the carbon lock in. So, what do you understand by carbon lock in and how to avoid the carbon lock in terms of various planning and other processes. And then the third one is spatial planning, urban form and infrastructure. So, the way it is in terms of the in a spatial scale means how it is arranged and how the infrastructure, how the urban form are arranged over a landscape. Then urban form and implications for greenhouse gas emissions. We will also talk about electrification and decarbonization of urban energy system, and towards the end we will see what are the cross cutting implications as far as the IMP or the illustrative mitigation pathways are concerned. So, in actual sense, when we talk about an urban area, so this is how it is arranged, it is organized. If you take if you put different layers or information layers one above other, like the one which is depicted down below, we have the land use, above this we have the transportation, above that we have the building and energy. So, all these are integrated over one space over the same landscape, but they can be separated or they can be understood in terms of various themes, as you can see in terms of transportation, building and energy. So, the urban form is the resultant pattern and spatial layout of land use, transportation networks and urban design elements that includes physical urban extent, and they configure the streets and buildings, their orientation, and finally the spatial configuration within and throughout cities and towns. So, in terms of the effects of mitigation by urban areas across the sectors is required, we can dissect them or we can address individual of them separately or cumulatively. Then coming to the low carbon cities as far as the urban form is concerned. The urban form are especially important for driving urban energy use, density, the mixture of various land uses and also connectivity among and between various land uses and also accessibility to different land uses. So, compact and walkable urban form has many co-benefits including mental and physical health, and they lower the resource demand and thereby saving land for the agriculture, forest and other land uses. So, let us see the low carbon cities, particularly what do we understand or how do we characterize the low carbon cities. The low carbon cities are co-located, particularly medium to high densities of housing, jobs and commerce, high mixture of land uses. So, if we have high mixture and particularly if this mixture includes lot of the plantation or the greenery, then they serve as carbon sink in the same urban space or urban form. High connectivity among the streets and low level of accessibility distinguished by relatively low travel distances and travel times that are enabled by multiple modes of transportation. So, another characteristics of the low carbon city is that there has to be high level of accessibility and low travel distance and time. So, if that is there, then we are emitting less in the in the context of transportation in a urban form. The implications for greenhouse emissions, you see you have a land user, the urban farm like that, and they are organized very well, and it is compact and walkable. And on the other side you see another one where lot of high raised building and multiplexes are there and bit dispersed. So, you can say they are a bit of autocentric in nature. So, in terms of the dispersed and autocentric vis-a-vis the composed and walkable kind of situation. So, in case of the composed and walkable situation, the buildings and neighborhoods are clustered closely together, and the mixed land use, particularly homes, shop, offices and the vegetations are nearby. The streets are connected and the human being are at a closest spatial scale distance, and people can walk, bike or use in terms of their transit or for their transport means, as far as the transport means is concerned. In contrast, if we have a look at the dispersed and the autocentric, so here development is spread out here and there in a larger landscape. Land uses are separated, housing is here, shopping is there and office is somewhere else, and large blocks and fewer connections. So, we have the various types of this kind of urban formation. Now, with this background as far as their orientation, let us go ahead in terms of the mitigation as far as resources efficiency, decarbonization and carbon lock-in are concerned. So, what we know, although this urbanization is a global trend, they are often associated with increasing income and human and higher consumption. So, this is the characteristics of cities or urban areas. So, what happens in these areas, the people, the habitation, they have a very high, relatively higher income and also higher consumption as well, and there is a high level of activities. So, that means lot of opportunities in terms of resource efficiency use and decarbonization. So, the point is what is made in the first three lines are there are lot of activities, income is good, is on higher side, lot of people they stay there, the activities is there. So, that means there is a scope of minimizing in terms, or you say scope for increase the resource use of efficiency there and also to decarbonize. So, if we do there, then we are doing in terms of a quantity, the quantity will be higher because lot of activities, lot of people and lot of opportunity. Come to the second point, most future urban population growth will occur in developing countries. So, it has been predicted that in future the more growth will occur in the developing countries where the per capita emissions are low, but it will go up as the what you say growth will happen in the developing countries. So, this emission will go up in terms of constructions and other new infrastructure or built environment coming up. So, and also it will lead to change in the income and the lifestyle pattern. So, this urban share of global greenhouse gases emission including the carbon dioxide and methane is substantive to continue to increase. So, as we know, so this emission, particularly the greenhouse gases, as we know, methane and carbon dioxide, they will rise as the growth in these developing countries will increase. So, what will happen? The urban land area could triple between 2015 to 2050. So, that means there will be peri-urban growth, and this will lead to implications as far as future carbon lock-in. So, what do you understand by future carbon lock-in? So, there will be a lot of technical, developmental and other measures will be in place, lot of infrastructure will come up. So, it will lock, it will arrest or it will it will consume lot of emissions in terms of carbon and other greenhouse gases. And then in term, if investments in coal and fossil infrastructure continue, now let us go to the other point in terms of the what you say the infrastructure usage or energy usage in this kind of infrastructure, particularly coming from the coal and fossil fuels, then it will be logged in higher emissions, because they will emit more of the carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So, we have to minimize the emissions from these sectors, particularly coal and other fossil fuels, which leads to a lot of emissions. So, if we can do, then it will perhaps limit the warming to below 2 degrees centigrade in comparison to our pre-industrial era, which we take as a year mark between 1850 to 1900. Now, coming to another term in terms of blue green infrastructure, or sometimes you say BG or GB, green blue and blue green. Friends, as the name indicates, green stands for vegetation and blue stands for water. So, friends, if we have lot of greeneries, they will withdraw a lot of carbon dioxide and also trap lot of heat, right? And then also this blue infrastructure, particularly the water bodies, they will also behave as the cooling areas. So, in turn they will act as the natural cooler or what you say heat absorbers. So, that way the mitigation benefits and the adaptation co-benefits will do a better job. So, one of the very important point is we need to put or include as much as green and blue infrastructure as possible as a means of mitigation. Then coming to urban mitigation options. In terms of urban mitigation options, we put them under 3 strategies. First is reduction or change in the urban energy and materials use towards more sustainable production and consumption across all sectors. So, in terms of urban growth, so a lot of construction and other activities will happen. So, there we have to change or reduce the energy and materials that have more in terms of the carbon or emission as far as the greenhouse gases is concerned. Electrification and switching to net zero emission resources. So, we have to switch to the net zero emission resources, which will address to our what you say in long run in terms of our net zero activities. We have to enhance the carbon storage. So, how do you do higher carbon storage? The cheapest means is in terms of green infrastructure and also blue infrastructure, because in terms of water body they also absorb and contain lot of what you say carbon or carbon dioxide, carbon in general. So, that way if we go for blue green infrastructure or as many as blue green infrastructure as possible within a city landscape, it is better. Look at the examples from the cities like Chandigarh, Bhubaneswar, Bangalore, you will see, and many other cities are now adopting this in India. Lot of green and blue infrastructure are fed or are interwoven within the urban space. And socio-behavioral aspect can shift energy demand and emerge as a result of implementing the strategies. So, more importantly is our mindset, the socio-behavioral aspect. So, if that takes a shift, then we will perhaps think of implementing the strategies and will also use less energy demanding or emission oriented fuel and other resources or materials. Mitigation efforts occur at various urban scales, particularly a home, different blocks, urbans and districts, and also the metropolitan region. So, what we mean to say that it has to be addressed at different scales and need to be implemented as a system wide initiative. That could be independent sector wise policies, or you can say this will lead to improvement in terms of appliances in energy efficiency. So, what I mean to say that there has to be system wide initiatives at individual sectors. So, we need to including the policy, including the appliances uses that works in the principle of energy efficiency or optimization. Then integrated action boosts human well-being. So, if we have integrated action across sectors, then it will boost towards mitigation efforts and in turn our own human well-being. So, effective, efficient, fair, and this way the urban mitigation would promote the sustainable development goals. So, we just mentioned about carbon lock-in. So, carbon lock-in emerges from institutional, infrastructural and technological interactions that reinforce individual and societal behavior. And the urban energy demand patterns are locked in by incremental planning decisions and long lasting infrastructure investment. So, if we can avoid the carbon lock-in which requires decisions by city beyond the city boundaries. So, policy level decision and other decisions also including pricing low emission technologies. So, the technologies which are really green or blue green technologies, they should be priced at a very low cost, so that it will reach to a larger mass in terms of the affordability. So, that will contribute towards mitigation in urban and other settlement areas. And as we also continue our discussion, we have now understood apart from carbon lock-in, the blue green infrastructure, and now we will talk about the multi-scale. So, multi-scale interventions and blue green infrastructure again. So, cities can only achieve the net zero emissions through deep decarbonization and systematic transformation. So, deep decarbonization and systematic transformation in the cities and other settlement areas needs cater to the mitigation efforts. Packages of mitigation policies that implement multiple urban scale interventions can have cascading effect. So, multiple urban scale intervention will have cascading effect in terms of reducing the greenhouse emissions outside of a city's administrative boundary and reduce more emissions than the net sum of individual interventions. Now, coming to the third point is the integrated spatial planning. In the very first or second slide, we discussed about various layers across the sectors. So, if we do integrated spatial planning, then we can achieve very well in terms of the compact and resource efficient urban growth by co-locating higher residential and job densities, mixed land use and transit oriented development. So, they all could reduce the greenhouse gas emissions substantially up to 25% by 2050 in comparison to the situation what we have now. So, the situation now we put as BAU, that means business as usual. So, we can reduce if we go for integrated spatial planning, then we can perhaps reduce the greenhouse gas emission over urban area or urban space by up to 25% or 1/4. So, this urban blue green infrastructure has a very important contribution, and it can also towards reduction in terms of energy use while offering us other multiple co-benefits. It offers other multiple co-benefits, as we know other multiple co-benefits of water body, wetlands, or you say the forest or the vegetation is already known to all of us. Coming to the informal practices and multi-scale governance, the potential and sequencing of mitigation strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions will vary depending on cities' land use. So, various cities have different land use practices, different spatial formation, different development levels and different state of urbanizations. So, somewhere in terms of they are a established city, somewhere you have a rapidly growing city with new infrastructure, and also you have a emerging city which is coming off a lot of new infrastructure build up. So, different cities have different requirements. So, different pattern, different situation. So, with over 880 million people living in informal settlements, there are opportunity to harness and enable informal practices. So, what are those informal practices and institutions? They are related to housing, related to waste, energy, water, sanitation. So, all these different what you say informal practices, if we reduce the carbon emission or the greenhouse the CO2 equivalent emission or greenhouse gases emission, then it will reduce the resource usage, and also more importantly it will contribute to mitigate the climate change. So, we need to address our activities in various informal ways in terms of our practices. Practices, as I mentioned, including the waste consumption pattern, the waste disposal pattern, the energy consumption pattern, the water usage pattern, the sanitation pattern. So, all these informal sectors, if we also address, we will do a lot of contribution, or will make lot of contribution and towards the mitigation of climate change. So, achieving these changes which we put under transformational changes. So, avoiding carbon lock-in, putting more of the blue-green infrastructure, addressing it in an integrated way, and the multi-scale approach including multi-scale governance, and also addressing issues or contributing in the informal way in our regular practices. So, if we do all this, then will means the city and other settlements areas will lead to transformational changes towards achieving the climate change mitigation and adaptation. But this, as we know, it needs multiple scale of governance, including the government and also the non-government or non-state actors, and in connection with substantive financing beyond the sectoral approaches. So, what are the pathways and trade-offs? So, the pathways and trade-offs are in terms of the electrification. It requires that cities have roles as policy architects, including the transit. So, planning in terms of electric vehicle targets and low emission zones, restrictions on type of energy use in new buildings. So, in terms of electrification pathways, we are moving in terms of low emission zone restriction, this that, and also the EV electric vehicles. The implementers, for example, building codes and compliance checking, financing incentives to encourage the consumer uptake of EV and heat pumps. So, lot of this have already started coming up in India also. We are doing lot of check, and during the winter time there is a role that odd and even kind of rule, and lot of electric vehicle purchase we are giving, various state governments are giving lot of subsidies, and also lot of projects are being funded, so that it can be come up in terms of R&D also, and in terms of a financial means measure also. It has to be as cheaper as possible and as convenient as possible, so that it will be adopted by any and all of these people in times to come, so that we will achieve the trade-off of electrification in urban systems will be achieved faster. So, complementary partners to national and state policy making, for example, they should permit or install a lot of charging infrastructure. So, there will be requirement of charging infrastructure at places. So, that also has to be come up in a joint venture or between national and state planning and things like that. So, urbanization and population density are one of the key drivers for enabling access to electricity across the world with benefits for sustainable development. So, if the increasing population, if the increasing urban as well as the rural population, they take it forward and they take these pathways forward, then trade-off of electrification will be achieved faster, and that will contribute highly towards the mitigation effort as far as the climate change measures are concerned. Now, let us have a look at the cross-cutting implications for urban areas, and with respect to the IMP, we call illustrative mitigation pathways. So, in terms of the reference scenarios and IMP, we have current policies, we have moderate actions, we have global strengthening, then net negative emissions, renewable energy, low demand and shifting pathways. So, friends, as far as the current policy is concerned, urban mitigation is challenged by overcoming lock-in to fossil fuel consumption. Also, with car based and low density urban growth prevailing. So, look at the cross cutting implications for urban areas as far as the policy is concerned. So, if we talked about lock-in, we talked about fossil fuel consumption. So, this is a challenge. So, we have to overcome that. The second point in terms of policy is consumption pattern have land impacts and supply chains remain the same in terms of urban inhabitants have limited participation in mitigation options. Next, let us look at the moderate action. In terms of moderate action, as far as the IMP is concerned, the renewable energy continues to increase its share, that is supported by urban areas to more limited extent with ongoing lock-in effects. So, it is though the renewable energy usage is continuing, but there is also little limitations as far as the lock-in is carbon lock-in is concerned. The changes in land use, consumption patterns and lifestyle mostly continue as before, with negligible changes taking place if any. The third, let us take in terms of the gradual strengthening. So, in terms of the urban areas, they depend upon energy supply from distant power plants or those in rural areas without rapid progress in urban electrification. So, the point is we have to act here because lot of transportation related things, because the urban area and the energy supply source are located at a distance, and in the rural areas the electrification or the change in terms of the EV and other things are to be addressed appropriately. Then coming to afforestation and reforestation. Afforestation and reforestation is supported with some delay, while lower incentives for limiting growth in urban extent provide inconsistencies. So, these programs which contributes to green infrastructure, they should be expedited, they should be executed faster, so that there could be provision as far as in terms of incentives who are putting it in incentive to the stakeholders as far as the urban area is concerned. And then the net negative emissions. The urban areas depend upon energy supply from distant power plants, and those in the areas they should be addressed in faster. In terms of the renewable energy, urban areas support renewable energy penetration with electrification and urban infrastructure and sectors coupling for increasing system flexibility. So, this is an option that the urban areas should support as far as the renewable energy is concerned. So, now the last one is in terms of the shifting pathways. Urban areas are transformed to be efficient, low demand and renewable energy supportive with an integral approach in urban planning. So, reducing measures enable the greenhouse gases emission reduction from consumption patterns, while also avoiding resource impacts across the various systems. So, friends, all this we have taken from these references. Now, to conclude, what we discussed are 5 major points. I will repeat again here. There has to be an integrated effort. The urban areas should be interwoven with blue-green infrastructure. There has to be actions in terms of the in terms of the shifting or trade off as far as the electrification is concerned, in terms of lot of EV uses and facilitating this, and also also policy measures to implicate this, and also giving some bonus or benefits or incentives who supports this. And the disparity between the urban and rural also has to be addressed properly, so that this technology, this measures what is being addressed or concerned with respect to urban also should travel to the rural areas faster. So, that will address in terms of mitigating the climate change as far as the urban and other settlement areas are concerned. Thank you very much.